It's after dark and it's time for Legal AF. Well, it's official. Mexico has won the trade and tariff war against the United States. And they did it by a social media post. Well, not quite, but we will explain it on Legal AF on our most recent episode. Take a listen.
Here's the thing, though, Popak. We're all trapped now in this reality show where fiction has morphed with reality. I think that's been accelerated by social media, also just kind of ripping the barriers of people's private lives and personal lives, and everybody's kind of performing on this stage, if you will, in this social media theater that doesn't really have these safeguards where disinformation can permeate. And so, you know, it's something that you and I in the MeidasTouch network, in defending good governance, statesmanship, we're referring that a statesman, stateswoman, statesperson, needs to speak soft and carry a big stick, the big stick type policy. Be powerful, but don't be obnoxious. I keep on talking about now we're kind of in the opposite right now. We're in the small stick policy, speak loud and obnoxious. But ultimately, when confronted, it's a very weak stick. I mean, Donald Trump really can't back it up. We saw that with Claudia Sheinbaum. So Trump goes out there, he talks about on social media, running trade policy that affects tens of millions of Americans with just a random social media post saying blanket tariffs, Mexico and Canada. He also referenced China, but a lot of it was directed at our closest allies. Mexico is our top trading partner. Canada is our other top trading partner, and saying we're going to do 25% blanket tariffs across the board. And then Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, and for those not following a lot of the developments in Mexico as well, Mexico has been doing pretty good lately. You know how MAGAs all talk about like Argentina, they love Argentina, right? Like wage growth in Argentina over the same period of time as wage growth of Mexico with Sheinbaum, and more significantly her predecessor, was I think negative 25% in Argentina and plus 22% in Mexico. Wages are rising in Mexico. It's developing rapidly in Mexico, and they've been working closely with President Biden to actually stop the migrant caravans. Notably, the MAGA Republicans killed a bipartisan border deal that would have been very helpful in terms of America's cooperation with Mexico and putting more border patrol officers, paying border patrol officers more, figuring out the asylum process. But Mexico and America over the past few years have been working together to actually fix problems that Trump created. So when Trump calls out Mexico, President Sheinbaum writes a letter to him and also gives a press conference right away. She didn't hesitate. It's as if, because I think this is what happened, she had studied his pathology, she prepared, she was ready to go. And she was very clear. She goes, you must not really understand the relationship that we have. To the extent you want to impose these tariffs, we will ensure that we do retaliatory tariffs. You should be aware that companies like Ford, Stellantis, General Motors, and other American companies have production factories in Mexico. You're going to hurt your own American companies if you come after us. There are no more migrant caravans anymore. That's a lie. And we've been working cooperatively to deal with this. And then she says, you need to focus on your own issues. You're the main synthetic drug consumers. When you want to talk about fentanyl, 99% of consumption occurs in the United States, not Mexico. And in terms of the trafficking of these drugs, most of the trafficking comes from Americans and not Mexicans. Most people who get fentanyl are getting it from Americans, from American dealers is where it's actually coming from. And so she laid it out there. And then she talks about how Trump needs to deal with, instead of spending all this money on war, perhaps you should spend your money fixing your immigration system and focusing on comprehensive immigration reform. And then Donald Trump immediately responds, we did the deal. We fixed everything. We're good now, basically. And who knows if he'll impose the tariffs or not. You never even know what he's going to do when he posts things on social media. But he acted like they're going to stop the migrant caravans. They said that they backed down. And it's like, that's not what she said at all. But doesn't that just go to tell you, Popak, how That's how he does deals also, which is why he's a bad business. He was never a good businessman. And by the way, the USMCA deal, the trade deal, was his deal. Rather than amend NAFTA, he creates the USMCA, which is basically an amendment to NAFTA, but he had to rename it so it was his. So he's now violating his own terms, creating chaos, lying about it, and then acting like this, like it's done. And it's not, like nothing's changed since his tweet.
Yeah, and so here's let me unpack some of that and run with it. We're back to trade policy, domestic policy, national security policy, economic policy, and diplomacy by social media post. This is what we hated about, and our allies and even our enemies hated about Donald Trump the first time around. He's going to use Truth Social now to post everything, much to the chagrin, maybe occasionally X to satisfy Elon Musk, and he's going to whipsaw everybody that relies on consistent, coherent policy, domestic and foreign. And he's also conducting policy now in a shadow government that is illegal. We have one president at a time. That president until January 20th at 11:59 a.m. is named Joe Biden. In meantime, Donald Trump is, I mean, it's one thing for like Mika and Joe to like go down and grovel at Mar-a-Lago. It's another thing for Trudeau. I'm going to talk about the comparison between Trudeau's reaction, a very Canadian reaction, and Mexico's reaction, which is fine. We'll put a 25% tax on GM and Ford, which has been here for 80 years, and you'll lose 500,000 of your jobs in America, and your prices will go up. Where Donald Trump's in the background going, I won. And the market's going, and the foreign exchange market, which really declared the winner to be Claudia Sheinbaum by raising the peso against the dollar by 1.5% almost immediately. You know, you got that dueling image of Donald Trump's, I used to call them tweets, his social media post, she's going to close the southern border. An hour later, Claudia Sheinbaum wrote, I'm not closing the border. We don't do border closing. We did a lot with the Biden administration to stop the caravans, to use an app. An app did more to stop the problem at the border, where you can sign up for an appointment with the U.S. Customs and Enforcement Bureau thing, than anything else. But they did all of that. That's the problem. This is the problem of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris not able to sell what their accomplishments were to anybody. They successfully dropped by 40% the crisis at the border by like huge numbers, but didn't take credit for it. I mean, we'll have another show about this, maybe a Popak Live. I'll do a rant on it. But so she, as you said, either because she anticipated, look, just like the attorney generals of the United States have been working for a year to get ready for a potential Trump presidency, even when Biden was having his issues, and then even when they switched to Kamala, they were still, all right, we know all the lawsuits we got to file. We got all the drafts ready. We know what we have to do. The sanctuary cities and states are ready. That's because they've been building for a year. Sheinbaum just got in. I think Donald Trump thought, I'm going to take advantage of a newly elected president, but then he doesn't know her history. Not only on the academic side, where she's a world-class PhD scholar when it comes to environment and environmental research scientist, but also a student activist and leader of the First Order. She's sort of the equivalent of our Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, who got born into a political family and has the sharpest elbows and the most astute political skills of anybody. That's why she was an amazing and effective Speaker of the House. And what the clown car thing that we're watching with MAGA isn't. Claudia Sheinbaum, same thing. She started out on this. You'll appreciate this, Ben. She started out as the president of her student council in college. That became the forerunner for the opposition party, the student-led revolution opposition party that swept AMLO into office, her predecessor, Obrador, and then she was the natural successor to that. She is a politician of the First Order the way Donald Trump has never been. She had her letter written already, as you said, where she laid out, you don't want this trade war with me, because you will have increased prices on your side of the border and a 500,000 person job loss. And then the market said, yeah, she's right. Peso goes up against the dollar. And then you watch the split screen of Trudeau. Now I know he's got his own problems in his own country, and and his provinces are forcing him to like go kiss the ring. He literally, just the optics of it, literally flew down to Mar-a-Lago, stayed at some hotel. I know this area well. I used to live down there in West Palm Beach. Didn't even stay in Palm Beach. Couldn't even stay at the nicer hotels. Goes to the hotels in West Palm Beach. Has to come across the bridge with his caravan, right? Speaking of caravans, to go meet with Donald Trump and Howard Lutnick and all these other trade advisors to talk about, please, we're not the fentanyl problem. We don't have a porous border. Please don't nail us with 25%, and then have to work out a deal with him. Just the optics of it was terrible. And it stands in sharp contrast to Mexico, which was sort of like, F you. You need us more than we need you. We're a major trading partner for you. When it comes to, people, they should just have in supermarkets, they should have little cards with little sticks in your food chain where you buy this fruit, where it comes from, in the countries that are involved. So you can see we can't go this alone. Not unless you want to, have a Soviet style supermarket that you wait in lines. You don't even know what you're going to get on the other end of the line. So I love her response. So does the world, the global economy. And you're already seeing, of course, Donald Trump taking false credit for things around the world. Like Zelensky in Ukraine, for instance, because Joe Biden allowed long-range missiles to be used and started to be used to give him leverage in negotiations, now has the ability to try to leverage a deal. He's offering NATO to protect all of Ukraine while they diplomatically negotiate over the parts that Russia took. But that's a Joe Biden accomplishment, not a Donald. He'll pick it up when he gets in. But these are all the things that were done before him. So here's my sort of kind of tie together of this. And then the last thing on the trade war before I leave that is the whole of his campaign. This is the lying to America that hopefully the Americans will wake up in time for the midterms and will remind them to pay him back for this, because he lied to them. He said that China and tariffs, it was always China and tariffs, right? Well, why were the tariffs against Canada and Mexico 25% and the threatened tariff against China 10%? And you haven't heard anything about that because China basically came back and said, we can wreck your economy. You don't want this fight. And you never heard Donald Trump make another word about it, right? Because he's trying to do on the cheap in his freeloading way through social media posts that which he cannot accomplish on the world stage. And it's shows like this, hopefully, that call this out on a regular basis.
Such a great point. It's like, let's get into power, or even before we get into power, and let's pick on our friends. It's so Trumpian. Let's abuse those closest to us because we think, in Trump's mind, I can get a cheap win by bullying Canada. I know Trudeau is politically vulnerable. I know that, in Mexico, or Trump's perception was wrong. He said, look, we're so much more powerful than them. Let's pick on our friends, even though my whole imagine if he ran the campaign, we're going after Canada. We're going after Mexico's economy. He ran the campaign, you're so right, saying we're going after China. And then the softest of what he did was actually about China. China responded and basically laughed in his face. China's response is, do it, we dare you to do it. And Trump backs down to that stuff. That's the thing. There's always the expression with fascism, don't obey in advance. The thing with Donald Trump is he's always been, his whole life, he's a paper tiger. He surrounds himself with a bunch of people who are quite literally willing to die for the guy and give their entire lives for the guy, like Rudy Giuliani. By the way, do we have that Giuliani video? Because let's play it. Because Trump manages to find people who surround themselves with people like this somehow.
I love that video.
Reality is, I have no cash. It's all tied up. So right now, if I wanted to call a taxi cab, I can't do it. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a checking account. I have no place I can go take cash out except a little bit that I saved. And it's getting down.
So Trump surrounds himself with people like that who are quite literally willing to destroy their lives for him. But Trump at his core, always, when you confront the guy to his face, the way we saw prosecutors do it, not the way the Supreme Court back. When you confront the guy, he backs down. He is afraid. And authoritarians know that he deep down is actually a very scared little man who fears Putin, who fears Xi, who fears Kim Jong-un. That's why, and he tries to project the thing with, he's not that. He isn't that guy. But he knows how to act and pretend like that guy, and people buy that shtick. It's weird to me, but there are people who buy it anyway.
Welcome back, Legal AF, a podcast at the intersection of law and politics. 5 years old, right here on the MeidasTouch Network, and we have a new YouTube channel. We call it Legal AF. What else? We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. Find out what 50 million people a month already know, that the home for law and politics analysis and commentary like no other is Legal AF. If you already know about us, I appreciate you being here. If you don't mind, please, a little bit of housekeeping. Take that clip, send it off to friends and family and others in your life, and ask them to find our show, and maybe they'll join our audience. That would be amazing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that was Legal AF. You are on the MeidasTouch Network, and I personally, Popak, invite you to join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here for YouTube, to watch the live recording of Legal AF, and then you can pick it up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. So until my next hot take, my next Legal AF contribution, either on the Legal AF YouTube channel or Legal AF, the podcast, I'm Michael Popak, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.